Sup, Ez? This is a video to help you get started on an iOS project that covers UI table view and delegation. So let's get started, and you want to just create a new Xcode project and create a single view application. I'm going to call mine Beer App, and you're just going to want to make it for iPhone only. So it created a couple files for us here. I'm going to throw the app delegate into supporting files because we won't really need to deal with that. The next thing we want to look at is our storyboard. So we have one view controller in the storyboard right now, and if you take a look at the identity inspector, which is this guy right here, you can see that the class of this view controller is view controller, which is defined in these two files right here. So anything you do to these two files will show up in this view controller. Now, if I throw a label into this view controller to make things a little more interesting and build, we'll see a label in the center of our user interface. And the reason that that occurs is because this app is set up to load main.storyboard by default. You can see where that's assigned if you select the project file. You can see main interface is looking for a file called main.storyboard. And then also in supporting files, beer app info.plist, there's a category called main storyboard file base name, and it's also set to main. So if you were to set this to be Ezra's storyboard, and then in the project selected Ezra's storyboard as your main interface, a completely different storyboard would load. Alright, let's go back to main storyboard. I'm going to delete this label. I'm also going to delete this class that was made for you. And I'm going to move it to the trash, because that will completely clean out your project directory. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new file, which will be Cocoa Touch and an Objective-C class. I'm going to call it Beer View Controller. It's going to be a subclass of UI View Controller. And then I'm going to go into main.storyboard, and I'm going to assign the class of this view controller to be Beer View Controller. So now anything I do in Beer View Controller will show up when the app is being run. So next thing I'm going to do is go to this .m file, and I'm going to delete a lot of these methods. Don't need navigation, don't need did receive memory warning, don't even need this init method here. We are going to keep view.didLoad because we're going to do some stuff in there. So the next thing that I want to go over is an important topic called delegation. And delegation is a way for Objective-C objects to communicate with each other. So the way that we'll demonstrate this is with UI text field. So we can add a text field to our project. And then we want to assign the delegate of this text field to be our view controller, which we can do in a number of ways. We can either control drag from the text field to the view controller and assign the delegate outlet, or we can do it programmatically, which actually still involves some control dragging. But let's do that first. So if you hit this little tuxedo right here, you get a split view between two different Xcode files. So here we have our storyboard, and then on the right we have our beerviewcontroller.m. So I'm going to take control drag from this text field to this file, and I'm going to create an IB outlet. I'll call it text field. Now I'm just going to pull up my .m file. So now in view.didLoad, I'm going to create a method called setup. I'm going to call it on self. And in that, I'm going to access this text field property that we just created. And I'm going to say self.textfield.delegate equals self. Now let's see, we have a warning here. And what it's saying is we're assigning the delegate of the text field to an object which doesn't say that it conforms to that protocol, that delegate protocol. So we can suppress that warning by going right here and saying this. And what this says is that Beer View Controller is promising to implement any of the required methods of the UI text field delegate. So let's check out that delegate protocol real quick. So if I go to UI text field delegate in the docs, we see that these are all methods, they're all optional, that a UI text field delegate can implement. And the way that this works is that when certain things are occurring within the UI text field, it sends or calls these methods on its delegate object. One that's interesting that you can use to help spell check or verify inputs is this text field should change characters in range replacement string. So we want to implement this one. So I'm actually just going to copy this method signature over. And I'm just going to return true for now, so we don't have that warning. But to try to illustrate a little more what's going on here, I'm going to drag in a little code snippet that I made earlier. And what this code snippet represents is what's going on within UI text field source code. Unfortunately, Apple hides this source code. You can't see it anywhere. You can see the .h file, but you can't see the .m or implementation file of the class UI text field. But somewhere inside UI text field, it has a method like this. And we can walk through this really quickly. So say you are entering text into the text field. Then this method, some method defined within UI text field, is called. It creates a Boolean variable called result. And the way it gets a value for this result is by calling this method on its delegate. It would take its self.delegate, and then it would call this function, text field should change characters in range, replacement string. And the arguments for that function are going to be self, it's going to send itself as the text field. Should change characters in range, it's going to take the range of the characters just entered. And the replacement string is the actual characters that were just entered. And then if there is a result, or excuse me, if the result is true, if it should replace the characters in range, it will add the characters to the text field, or else it will do nothing. It won't add the characters to the text field. So I'm going to comment this out. And instead of just unconditionally, well, let's see what happens if we just say yes, replace the characters in the text field. So this way, we should be able to enter any character into the text field. Because every time I press a character, this method is being called. We can verify that by adding a breakpoint here. So let's keep that there. If I press this, it's calling this, and then the delegate is saying, yes, you can add that character to the text field. So instead of just unconditionally saying, yes, you can add that character, let's make it conditional. We'll say, if the string from this method is equal to string A, we'll say return no. And what this is going to do is this is not going to allow any A's to be entered into the text field. And then else will return yes. So you should be able to enter any character except for an A into the text field. So if we go up here, all those enter fine, but wait, we can't enter our A because this is going to get called when the character is entered, and then if the string is equal to A, it's going to return no, which, as we saw from here, it's going to do nothing. Okay, I'm going to pause this.